our nation's critical networks. A Homeland Security subcommittee today is looking at cyber attack threats and ways to reduce the risk. Texas Congressman McCaul is chairman of the Oversight, Investigations, and Management Subcommittee that's having this hearing this afternoon. Congressman McCaul, nice to have you with us.
Well, thanks, Jenna. Thanks for having me.
So you're talking about setting standards for federal computer networks, like computer networks that are used by the CIA, NASA, the Department of Defense. How vulnerable are these networks right now?
They're under attack every day. We have 100,000 hits per week on the CIA's website, probably 1 million hits in the House of Representatives. Every federal agency has been hacked into, and enormous amounts of data have been stolen, primarily by the Chinese. And we're talking about military secrets, the F-35 Joint Strike airplane, blueprints were stolen. This poses a serious threat to our national security, and we need to harden these federal networks. Imagine if agents of a foreign power were caught in the Pentagon stealing paper files, yet in the virtual world, that's what happens every day.
Wow, every single day? So what's in place right now, and what more do we need to do?
Well, I'm holding a hearing today to illustrate the threat. I think the cyber theft of intellectual property, $1 trillion have been stolen from the United States. How difficult to be competitive when they're stealing that amount of intellectual property. The espionage is really over the top from China. And finally, the cyber warfare piece is a piece that keeps me up at night the most, in terms of the idea that they could bring down power grids, financial institutions, really wreak havoc in the United States to bring America to its knees. And so we have historic legislation on the floor this week to deal with the issue of hardening the federal networks, information sharing between the federal government and the private sector on these, what they call signature threats, to better protect both the federal government but also the private sector, which controls about 90% of that critical infrastructure out there.
Well, definitely a lot of concerns. You mentioned the $2 trillion of intellectual property that is estimated to be stolen. I was looking at your website, and you have our $15 trillion debt clock up and ticking as we speak right now. And so this is a time of austerity. How do we prioritize, and how much money do you really need, if at all, to update some of these systems and make sure that the federal government in particular, those systems are secure?
I think the good news is most of these bills will be working within the existing budgets in an intense partisan environment. These bills are actually very bipartisan, so I anticipate they're going to sail through the Congress this week, and that's good news. I think the information sharing piece is really just using a pilot study that NSA worked on and use that to work with the private sector to better protect, again, these critical infrastructures. We're talking about energy, financial institutions, power grids, all these sort of things. Anything connected to the internet is subject to being brought down. And I can't emphasize that enough. I think this is an issue that has been long overlooked. When I talked to the director of NSA, I asked him when he expected, or was it possible we could have a cyber Pearl Harbor. His response was, the answer is not if, but when.
Right, and the Secretary of Defense had that to say as well. He echoed that. But how much? How much money will you need to do what you want to do?
Again, I think a lot of this we can work within existing budgets.
I see.
And
okay.
I think that also the information sharing piece is just getting the relevant stakeholders together with the federal government to make sure they know about these cyber threats that are out there and how better to protect themselves.
The information sharing piece is something else that our viewers are very concerned about, just as far as private property and making sure that their data is protected as well. Everyone's for the safety of the country, but there's also that piece, and we'd love to have you back, Congressman McCaul, to talk more about that side. But this is a great introduction to your work, and we look forward to having you back. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks, Jenna. Thanks for having me.
5 states are holding presidential primaries today. Mitt Romney is pushing to win more delegates and try to come close.